to solve for x, what we want to do is we want to isolate x. That means we want x by itself. So in order to do that, you look at what we have here. We have x plus 1 is equal to 2. So in order to isolate x, we want to notice that we have an addition sign right here. So what we want to do is, since we have an addition sign, we're going to use the opposite of addition, which is subtraction. So what we're going to do is, since we have a plus 1, we are going to subtract 1 from both sides. So I'm going to take a minus 1 here, and I'm going to take a minus 1 here, okay? So a plus 1 minus a 1 is 0, right? And 2 minus 1 is just 1. So now we have x plus 0 is equal to 1, which means that x is equal to 1. And that makes sense, right? Because if we're saying x plus 1 is equal to 2, so if we take our 1 and plug it in for x, then that means that 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. So it makes sense. Okay, so this will be your answer for the first one. Let's look at our second one. This time we have x minus 1 is equal to 2. Notice the operation is a minus sign this time. Therefore, we're going to take the opposite of a minus sign, which is a plus sign. So we are going to add 1 to both sides. And that leaves us with the 0 here. Okay, we're adding 1 here. So, we're saying 2 plus 1 is equal to 3. Okay, so now we have x is equal to 3. Okay, so there you have it for our second example. Now let's look for our third example. This time we have a negative sign on the right side of the equation, but still we have a plus sign. We're dealing with an operation of a plus sign when it comes to the side of the equation where we have the variable, which is x. So the opposite of 1 again is minus 1. So we are subtracting 1 from both sides. So 1 minus 1 is 0. Negative 2 minus 1 is a negative 3. So x plus 0 is equal to negative 3, which means that x is equal to negative 3. There you have it for our third example. Let's look for our fourth example. Again, we're doing the same thing, but this time we have a negative sign attached to the x. So what are we going to do here? Well, let's not worry about the negative sign just yet. How about we get x by itself? So we have an addition symbol here, so we're going to take the opposite of addition, which is subtraction. So we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. We're left with 0 here, and we're left with 1 here. So now we have negative x plus 0 is equal to 1, which means that negative x is equal to 1. Now, how do we get x by itself? Well, remember, there is an operation where if I take a negative number and I multiply both sides by it by a negative number, then a negative times a negative is just a positive, right? So if I take a negative 1 and multiply it by negative x, it becomes a positive x. And if I take a negative 1 and I multiply it times a positive 1, then we're given a negative 1. So I'm just going to take a negative 1 and multiply it to both sides. 1 times a negative 1, right? So this becomes a positive x and a negative 1. So x is equal to negative 1. So there you have it for our first 4 examples. Let's look into our next 4. Okay, so moving on to our next 4 examples. Notice that the difference between the first set of examples and this set of examples is that we do have a fraction. And notice that our fraction is on the right side of the equation, okay? So let us start with our very first example. So again, we're going to take the same concept as we did before, and we have a addition operation, so we are going to subtract both sides by a 1, okay? So this leaves us with, I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite the equation out. Positive 1 minus 1 is just a 0. And since we have a fraction here, I'm going to just write them side by side, because when you have a fraction, you want to be very careful here. So this time we have a 1/2 minus a 1. So now we're actually adding a fraction, and you will need to have a good knowledge about how to add and subtract fractions. That is in another video. I can leave the link below in the description if you need to refresh in your memory on how to add and subtract fractions. So let's get going. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one here a denominator of 1. So we have x is equal to 1/2 minus a 1/1. We need a least common denominator, right? Our least common denominator is a 2. So I'm going to say x is equal to 1/2 minus, and I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by a 2 to give us a least common denominator. So now we have x is equal to 1/2 minus 2/2. Now that we have a common denominator, we can combine. So now we have x is equal to 1 minus 2/2. We are able to combine our numerator because we have a common denominator. So we're left with x is equal to -1/2. And there you have it for your first example. Okay, so let's move on to the second example. We have a minus sign here. So we need to do the opposite of a minus, and therefore we need to add 2 to both sides. So a -2 plus a 2 gives us 0 on the left side of the equation. So I'm going to go ahead and say x plus a 0 is equal to 1/2 plus 2. Now, once again, I need to, I'm going to go ahead and make 2 into a fraction. So we have x is equal to 1/2 plus 2/1. We need a common denominator, which is 2. So we're going to say x is equal to 1/2 plus 2 times 2/2 times 1. So now we have a common denominator. So that makes it 1 plus, it's going to be 1/2 plus 4/2. Now we can combine the numerator, which is 1 plus 4/2, which means that we have x is equal to 5/2. Okay, and if you want to simplify that some more, or if you want to convert it into a mixed number, you can do that as well, or you can just leave it as is here. Let's move on to our third example. So we have an addition sign here, so that means what? We need to subtract 3 by both sides. So we're going to have x is equal to -1/3 minus 3. And now I'm going to give this whole number a denominator, which means we have x is equal to -1/3 minus 3/1. We need a common denominator. What is our common denominator? Our common denominator is 3. That means we need to multiply the top and the bottom of this fraction by 3. So I'm going to say x is equal to -1/3 minus 3 times 3 all over 1 times 3. Again, we have x is equal to -1/3 minus 9/3, which means we have x is equal to -1 minus 9 all over 3, which means we have x is equal to a -10 all over 3. Okay, and that is your answer for this third one. Let's look at our final one here. We have an addition sign here, so I'm going to subtract both sides by a 4. So we're left with -x is equal to 1/3 minus a 4. Again, I want a common denominator, but first I'm going to go ahead and make this whole number into a fraction by making it 4/1. And again, we need a common denominator, which is 3. So we have 1/3 minus 3 times 4 all over 3 times 1. Again, if you need to refresh your memory on how to add and subtract fractions, please click the link below because I'm assuming that you already know this part. So I'm going through it very fast. Okay, so next we have negative x is equal to 1/3 minus 12 over 3, which means we have negative x is equal to 1 minus 12 all over 3. We can combine our numerators. So we have negative x is equal to a negative 11 all over 3. And we want to get rid of this negative sign. So I'm going to multiply both sides by a -1, okay? So a negative times a negative becomes a positive. A negative times a negative becomes a positive. So we are left with x equals to 11/3. There you go with those set of examples, and stay tuned for our next set of examples. Okay, we are on a roll here. So I want you to take note of how the setup is on the board now. So notice that in our first examples, or our first set of examples, we did not have any fractions. On the second set of examples, we had a fraction on the right-hand side. And in this set of examples, I'm actually condensing two different types in one round because I think you're getting the hang of it now. Notice that our first two examples have a fraction on the left side of the equation and a whole number or an integer on the right side of the equation. And notice that our second set here, we have a fraction on both the right side and the left side. That way you can see how to work these kinds of problems from every angle. That is what my intention is for this video. Okay, so let us start. I think you already have the hang of it by now. So we have an addition sign. That means we're going to subtract both sides by 1/3. So I am going to say minus 1/3 here, and I'm going to say minus 1/3 here. But be very careful with fractions. I like to write them side by side when you're dealing with fractions because it's very easy to make a mistake. So we know that 1/3 minus 1/3 is 0, so we're okay with that. So x plus 0 is equal to 2 minus 1/3. Now, I like to go ahead and give this whole number a denominator. 2 is the same as 2 over 1, right? That is the exact same thing. So I like to go ahead and give 2 a denominator of 1 so we can see that it is, we can put it or make it into a fraction, okay? So we have x is equal to 2 over 1 minus 1 over 3. Now we need a common denominator, right? Our common denominator is a 3. That means I am going to multiply the top and the bottom by this first fraction by a 3. And let's bring down our 1/3. So now we have x is equal to 6 all over 3 minus 1 over 3. And now we can combine our numerators. So that is 6 minus 1 over 3, which means that we have x is equal to 5 over 3. And there you have it for our first one. Let's go to our second one. Same deal, right? We have a minus sign. That means we need to add both sides by 1/3. So I'm going to say plus a 1/3 here, and we have a plus 1/3 here. But again, I want to go ahead and rewrite it out. So we have x plus 0 is equal to 2 plus 1/3, which means we have x is equal to 2 over 1 plus 1 over 3, which means we have x is equal to 2 times 3 all over 1 times 3 plus 1 over 3, which means we have x is equal to 6 over 3 plus 1 over 3, which means we have 6 is equal to 6 plus 1. X is equal to 6 plus 1 over 3, and we have x is equal to 7/3. There we have it. Okay, we're on a ball. We're moving, right? Notice that these last two over here, we have a fraction on both sides of the equation. We will still apply the same exact concept. So we have a addition sign. That means we want to subtract 1/3 from both sides, right? So writing it out in a linear way here, we have x plus 0 is equal to 1/2 minus 1/3. Again, you want to brush up on your adding and subtracting fractions. That is in a different video. The link will be down below in the description. But for now, I'm going to run through it a little faster than I would if I was actually trying to show you how to add and subtract fractions. I'm assuming you already know how to do this, so I'm going through it much faster. We need a common denominator. Our common denominator is a 6. So we are going to say x is equal to 1 times 3 all over 2 times 3 minus 1 times 2 all over 3 times 2. This is how we're going to get a denominator of 6 for both fractions here. So now we have x is equal to 3 all over 6 minus 2 all over 6, which means we have x is equal to 3 minus 2 all over 6, which means we have x is equal to 1 over 6. That is our answer. And last but not least, I think you have it by now. We are adding 1/3 to both sides. Yes, 1/3 to both sides. And now we have x plus 0 is equal to 1/2 plus 1/3. Again, we need a common denominator. Our common denominator is a 6. So we have x is equal to 1 times 3 all over 2 times 3 plus 1 times 2 all over 3 times 2. Again, because we have to multiply the top and the bottom by a 3 of this first fraction to give us a denominator of 6 here, and we need to multiply the top and the bottom by a 2 over here so that we can get a common denominator of 6 for our fraction of 1/3. Okay, so now we have x is equal to 3 over 6 plus 2 over 6. Now we're combining the numerator, which is 3 plus 2 all over 6. And that means we have x is equal to 5 over 6. There you have it. Yes, I think that you have plenty of different kinds of examples to see how to approach solving for x from any angle. So no matter what your instructor throws at you, you should be able to solve for x. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Have a great day. Bye-bye.